Every single time there is a release of water from Lake Okeechobee, it causes all sorts of different things, such as red tide, salinity drops, blue-green algae, all sorts of things that are no good for the environment. And it happens every single year now, like clockwork. You see, literally, when these outflows happen, and these outflows, CFS is cubic feet per second. So when these outflows go, they can release. I mean, this is literally off the charts. I don't know how much higher these things go. Let's see. It says, I mean, it's not even bringing me to the highest rate, 7,704 cubic feet per second. It's like they're making it difficult, honestly, to check. But close to 8,000, if not over, feet per second at the highest levels. Now, all of this is, this water, this fresh water from Lake Okeechobee, that is also has a bunch of fertilizers and pesticides and all sorts of nasty runoff stuff from the lake, gets dumped into the Gulf and Atlantic. The Atlantic has deeper water, it's cooler, it's harder for red tide to really gain a foothold, but the Gulf is shallower, it doesn't have as much current, and red tide is always present in the water. It's a naturally occurring algae. But then it's a plant. When you feed it nitrogen, which could be from sewage, it could be from fertilizer, because that's literally what a fertilizer is supposed to do, is to feed the plants. And so when you get all this extra nutrients in the water for plants, along with, basically a blown off salinity from all this water being dumped out, you end up creating a cesspool for things that kill a lot of animals. Red tide isn't the only thing you have to worry about. There's also blue-green algae and a whole bunch of other stuff. But the point is that this outflow causes major ecological destruction. And the Army Corps of Engineers doesn't really give a shit about the environmental part. They want to protect people, which I get. But that's kind of the point, is that if this is a major ecological issue that we have to worry about, we should probably stop putting people in a place like that. It's big sugar, it's this, it's that, the other thing. I can blame 100 different groups or organizations for this. But the major point is that every single year these major outflows happen, and there's a natural way it used to happen. It used to flow through the Everglades. Okay, the Everglades would filter the water. That's literally what the Everglades is the overflow from Lake Okeechobee and the St. Johns River. Like, it all goes south and it ends up in the Everglades, and the Everglades just filters out all that gunk. And before people, we've disrupted that flow. So we shoot it out into the Gulf and the Atlantic instead of it pushing it south. And that has caused a bunch of major issues. You remember last year when there was a bunch of spinning sawfish and dying fish that were just spinning around in circles? After a bunch of testing, a bunch of necropsies, this is almost a year later at this point. The last one died, I believe it was August 14th is what this article says. They've tested a bunch of stuff and no consistent patterns. They can't figure out what was going on. They basically conclude that while the exact cause or causes of the spinning behavior and sawfish mortality in the Gulf or in the Florida Keys remains unknown, they're still looking into it and assume that it's a bunch of different types of algae. But they have no idea. These animals just died, were spinning. We don't know. I understand that scientists have to take their time to do the testing. I get that. But it doesn't make sense to me that there is no known cause. There's probably a known cause, or at least an idea, and the state doesn't want to talk about it. You know why? Because I believe that the state is probably responsible, or at least I think it's all connected. Okay, the outflow, these algae blooms, it could literally be a company spilling toxic waste into the water. Maybe that has something to do with it, and it's not the state's fault. But from everything all coming together, my humble opinion, this is an opinion, this is not fact, is that The reason all this is happening is due to a state issue of releasing all this stuff into the water. Now, this is another chart. Carina brevis is the scientific name for red tide, okay? K. brevis. And you can see this is current, let's see, through 2/20/2025. So a couple days old, but gives you an idea. Sarasota has high levels of red tide right now, and it's gone down. It was a lot worse. There was a lot of fish kills already. This is winter. Okay, we're still in winter. It's might be warm to a lot of people in Florida, but the waters off of the Gulf and Atlantic don't follow what the land temperatures are. It's still like, in the 60s right now in the Gulf. Okay? I grew up here. I was born and raised here. Back in the day, I remember, I think it was 2004, 2005, whenever Katrina came through. I think that was 05. Anyway, there was a big red tide bloom in 2005. That was like the first one I can remember. I remember walking on the beaches in Pinellas County. This is where I was born and raised, right over in this area. I remember walking on the beaches and seeing the fish kills everywhere. Tons of crazy fish. And then Katrina came through and washed up the Gulf, and the red tide went away. It like broke it up. I think Katrina came across South Florida and it went up the coast. Boom. Anyway, the point is that it was mostly like a warm water summer thing. And now it's happening during the winter. I don't know if that's a normal thing. I have to look into that because I keep on noticing that. Like, it feels like it happens in the winter all the time now when it never used to happen in the winter. Or maybe it just wasn't a big deal and it could always survive in the winter. But, the blooms happen during summer because the hurricanes and all that brought all that extra, like, sewage and stuff. Sewage spills every single time there's a hurricane in Pinellas County because we grew too fast to work on the infrastructure. So every time it rains a lot, they end up dumping all the sewage into the water. It's a whole big thing. That's a whole nother issue. But it's the same principle as releasing all this water from Okeechobee through the Caloosahatchee right here. Okay? All that water gets distributed right here, and then the red tide ends up making its way all up and down the coast. So it's a huge deal. This whole thing is a huge deal. That every single year this happens, and it's like we forget about it. It goes away for a bit and we don't think about it. Just like the drones before the election. I thought we were supposed to figure out what that was, and it just never got brought up again. I mean, hopefully it gets brought up again, but that's the point here. It's like every single year we get mind wiped, and it's like the Army Corps of Engineers goes, "Hey, we got to release some water," and we're like, no, and they're like, "Yeah, sorry," and then shortly after that happens, we start having red tide events. They're like, there's no thing that could tell us that it's related. There's no correlation. It's just, it happens. Bullshit. We all know at this point that this is exactly related. You may not want to admit it. The state might not want to admit it. But here's the thing. All this stuff is connected. All the agriculture, all the water flowing downstream here, the St. Johns River, all this stuff is connected. It used to flow south to the Everglades. And now that water builds up in Lake Okeechobee and is spilled out in either direction. And a huge amount of fresh water that normally didn't have that, didn't go in these places are now in these places every single year. There's too many people. There's too much overflow. It needs to be sent back down south. The Everglades, but it's always one thing after the other that's causing all these issues. Here's the thing. I know that they're building a canal. Okay, so I've passed this spot multiple times. They're dredging a canal south of Lake Okeechobee right now. And my understanding is that they're going to try to send a lot more water south to ease the burden on the Caloosahatchee and all that. And, there's all these canals all over the place in South Florida. Throughout the cane fields, they send water all over the place so that the cane fields can get water. It's all connected. Okay, unless you've been down there, it's very hard to explain. But in this situation, I believe that they're trying to do something a little better than just releasing it into the Gulf in the Atlantic. But hopefully, something like this works. But again, it literally is just sending all that water with the same contaminants somewhere else, and it's just. I'm hoping this works because I don't know what other options there really are. Besides like banning certain maybe you ban some sort of pesticides or fertilizers and all that. Like all this stuff is stuff that probably should be in effect, but the state makes too much money off of these companies and people moving here. So it's just like at a loss. It's like I'm sitting here beating my head against the wall. Every single year this stuff happens, and we just need more and more people to see what is going on and maybe make some sort of change. But honestly, I severely doubt that's going to happen. It's kind of sad, but here we are again, the beginning of 2025, and we're still talking about the same thing. And the only thing I can think to do right now is just to keep on talking about it, and hopefully somebody sees it and can actually do something about it. And hopefully sooner in the future I'll be able to do something about it. We'll see. I'll probably do a video from that canal here pretty soon because I pass it pretty frequently. So the next time I pass it, I'll pull over and do some video work of the canal being built. So anyways, thank you for sticking around. I know this one wasn't as exciting, but it's something that is very much on my mind recently, and I hope that we can actually do something about it here in the near future. So anyway, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.